if they want to.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo. We have an interesting show tonight. My guest, Carl Dix from the Revolutionary Communist Party, and he's going to be talking about this upcoming event with Cornel West and Bob Avakian, who are going to be discussing revolution and religion, which is two subjects that I'm very interested in, being a Catholic schoolboy and being a straight-A student in religion when I was growing up as a kid, and also a little bit of a revolutionary. I like to think, at least a rebel in my mind and in my heart. And so they're both subjects that are dear to my heart, and we're so happy to have Carl here. Thank you very much, distinguished guest. And well, I'll show this in a minute, the poster and all the information. Well, oh, good, they're giving me again, so I'll show it here. This is the poster. It's a pretty cool poster, and we'll be showing this again and again and again. Revolution and Religion, the fight for emancipation and the role of religion, a dialogue between Cornel West and Bob Avakian. It's November 15th, 3 to 7 p.m. at the Riverside Church. And there's all your revcom.us. Get your tickets, and we'll be talking more about that. So, Carl Dix, thank you for joining us, again, returning to Let Them Talk, and to talk about this very interesting event. First, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first, thank you for having me on, and I'm a representative of the Revolutionary Communist Party. I'm really psyched about this dialogue because I know both of the speakers. I've had deep discussions with them. I've shared jail cells with Cornel, and Bob Avakian's the architect of the framework for emancipating humanity that served as the inspiration and guidance for the work that I've done. But for me, I always said, well, I was just a black kid growing up in the ghetto.
Where?
Baltimore, Maryland. Got drafted, got orders to go to Vietnam. In the midst of rebellions in the ghettos across the country, dogs being sicked on school, little children, marching for the right to vote. And I had to decide, could I go and fight for this country when black people were being treated like that? And I decided I couldn't. I have to credit the Times for helping me to see that, and the people who went before me, but I decided I couldn't. I refused to go to Vietnam, spent a couple years in Leavenworth Military Penitentiary, came out the prison doors as a revolutionary, hooked up with the Revolutionary Communist Party as it was being founded, and that's the path that I've been on ever since.
And speaking of dogs being sicked and these kind of events, we're waiting expectantly for the decision in Ferguson, Missouri, whether this officer is going to be indicted or not. So it's not as if these days are that far behind us.
No, they're not behind us. They're still all up over us. And when people say, why are you still a revolutionary when almost everybody else gave up, I cite things like that. And, as far as this grand jury decision, we're waiting, but we should not just be waiting. We should be getting ready to respond because, look, all indications are that they're going to let this killer cop walk the way they've let so many others walk. And Michael Brown's murder in Ferguson has been different than and there have been far too many murders of black and Latino young people and older people too. But this one was different in the way that people responded. Those defiant young people in Ferguson who stood up and said, not this time, not one more, forced onto the front burner for all of society this question of police murder of black people, and we have to keep that going, whatever the result is. People need to be out in Union Square the day that decision comes out. If it's letting the killer cop walk, we should be there in outrage.
That's going to be the place where people meet.
That's where people should meet, Union Square.
All right.
And look, if they indict him, we still should be out in the street, because we should remember they indicted Zimmerman for the murder of Trayvon, and then the prosecutors forgot how to prosecute, and he got off. And they've even indicted some cops. We remember Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, the cops that murdered them got indicted. And then the prosecutors who are so adept at getting black and Latino people off into prison forget how to prosecute when it's a killer cop or a racist vigilante that they're dealing with.
Or they put it all off on one cop and then the whole system that was behind it.
Well, they mostly don't do that, though. It's seldom that they do that. I mean, I was going through it and counting the cases, and they're not that many. I mean, Lavoti went to jail in his second trial for choking Anthony Baez to death. The cop who sodomized Abner Louima went to jail.
Okay, right.
Then it gets kind of thin. You have to go all the way over to L.A., where the cops who beat Rodney King on TV
20 years ago.
20 years ago in their second trial again, because their first trial they got off. That's what we're dealing with, and that's one big reason why we need a revolution, because a society that says that those who are supposed to protect and serve basically have a license to kill is illegitimate, no damn good, and needs to be gotten rid of. And there are more reasons.
That's a good one. Good story. So now that gives us a background of where you're coming from and your history, which is good to know. And when we begin the next phase of this discussion, and to ask you about what revolution and religion has to do with it. What does religion have to do with revolution?
Well, look, this is a question that is of great importance for hundreds of millions of people around the world when you look around the world and what's being dealt with. And it's a big question here because there are a lot of people who grapple with this question of motivation to take on injustice. And many people, including Cornel West, find their motivation in religion. Then there's the question of, does religion ultimately serve as a fetter and a roadblock to full emancipation of humanity? That's a question that's going to be gone into, the relationship between people being motivated by religion to fight injustice, and can that fight go all the way? Also questions like, can people be good without God? Because that's a question that gets posed. Well, we require that, greater spiritual being to keep us on the straight and narrow, as opposed to, well, wait a minute, what about being human? Because we were talking about police murder, and they're saying, well, we need to train our police better. Yeah. You don't need to be trained not to murder somebody. Your humanity should be able to carry you through that, and it speaks to the fact that the system is all messed up, that people are actually trained, oriented, and rewarded for carrying out that kind of brutality and murder. But this is going to be a discussion. See, because a lot of times people have said to me, well, isn't it going to be a debate? No, it's going to be a dialogue. Right. It's going to be two deep thinkers who have great respect for each other, but who also take an approach to these kinds of conversations of wanting to learn from the other person. It's not going to be a...
Who's your audience for this? Who's the target audience for this discussion?
Well, the audience is actually very broad. I mean, because we're going to have special invited guests from the projects up in Harlem, where the NYPD carried out a raid and arrested more than 100 young black men on conspiracy charges. They've got them facing 30 years to life, and I read the indictment. Some of them, their actions that furthered the conspiracy were they posted on Facebook, "Rest in peace" for one of their homies who was killed. That was a concrete act furthering a conspiracy. Well, their parents are standing up to fight this injustice. We're working with them to do that, and we have invited them as special guests. Right. Nicholas Hayward, Juanita Young, parents of police murder victims, they are also special invited guests. But we're also going to Columbia, to Hunter, to Queens College, other colleges, and calling on those youth who are looking around and seeing great injustice. You need to be here. You need to be there to talk about the role of religion in the fight for emancipation of humanity, because that's what's needed. Humanity needs to be emancipated. So there are a number of academics who are on the host committee. I don't want to start going through names.
It's good. Just the general areas of where people are coming from. That's fine. Also, Carl Dix, I wanted to ask you about, to tell us how people can find out about this event and how they can get there and where it's going to be and when it's going to be. Give us the information.
Okay, let's go through that. November 15th, Saturday, 3 o'clock at the Riverside Church, the historic Riverside Church.
Sure.
And
I'll hear while you're saying that, I'll hold the
a great place for this conversation. Doors open at 1:30, and you can go to the website revcom.us. That's REVCOM.us, and find out all the information. You can find out where tickets are on sale. Revolution Books in Manhattan is selling tickets, but there are also ticket sites up in Harlem. I don't remember them right now. I'm blanking on that, but you can go to revcom.us and find out about those sites for ticket sales. And there's some other bookstores that are selling tickets.
Right. So the progressive bookstores are going to have it.
And if you've got friends out of town who are interested in this kind of thing, give them a call, because buses are being organized to come up from Ferguson, Missouri. Some of the people right on the front lines there want to be in the house for this. Buses are being organized from Atlanta, from Chicago. So people are coming.
Wow. So this is really a national event.
It's a national event. It's being live streamed in Los Angeles and San Francisco. So we want people experiencing this.
Right. Very interesting. Well, so let me go to the next part, Carl Dix, is to ask you a little bit about, we talked about Cornel West. Tell us a little bit about who is Bob Avakian? I mean, why should we care? Tell us why.
We should care about this because this is a person who's developed a whole new framework for the emancipation of humanity. Someone who has looked at...
That's a big big. That's a big statement, right?
And he's the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party, but even more than that, he has dug deeply into the previous experience of revolution and communism, digging through it for what was done right and countering the lies of the capitalists and their mouthpieces about slandering revolution and communism.
But you didn't say what was done wrong.
That's what I was coming to.
Okay.
The other thing is he has looked at where things went wrong, where people fell short, and looked at that and said, we have to look at that. We can't cover that over and say, don't look. But we have to actually put a spotlight on that, come to understand what led to those errors. Why did things fall short in these different areas? And then broke through on some of those, developed a new approach to revolution and communism capable of going at those. So the next time revolution is made and power is in the hands of the people, we can go farther and do better at what the mission is, which is the emancipation of all of humanity.
Great. Tell us a little bit about Bob Avakian's background, a little bit how he got to this point. Not too much, he's not here. I would love to hear him here. Tell us about that. But you know him. Tell us a little bit about how he got to be a revolutionary leader who's made all these type of statements and analyses and who has obviously a following of people who respect him deeply.
Yes. Goes back to the free speech movement at University of Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. Avakian was a participant in that. He was also a supporter of the Black Panther Party, someone who saw that this was an organization of young brothers and sisters that was on the front lines that demanded the support of everybody who stood for justice. But Avakian didn't want to just support those who were on the front lines. He felt that we needed to come up with an approach to end all these horrors. And that's what he's been working on since the 1960s. And he led in the formation of the Revolutionary Union out in the San Francisco area, which played an important role in bringing together the Revolutionary Communist Party.
He's a baby boomer. He came up in the baby boom period at a time, and the music he liked, and the music, right? He's a big music.
Because I share a lot of that with him. I mean, whenever you get with him, there's going to be some doo-wop sung, and then it's going to be talked about because he's analyzing everything.
A leader of your party and a friend of yours just passed recently.
Yes, a brother, Clyde Young, brother who the beginning of his life was the track that many black youth go on, which is into prison and in and out of prison. But he's somebody who in prison became a revolutionary and came out in the 1970s and dedicated his life to it. He's also been struggling with some health problems. And just to give you a sense of the kind of brother he was, 2 days before he passed away, he wrote me an email, and he knew I was heavily involved in the October month of resistance to mass incarceration. So Clyde writes me and says, I've gotten past some of the things I need to focus on. That was his way of referring to his health challenges. And he says, put me to work. I want to help make this happen. And this was like a day or two before he passed. So like all the way down, this brother wanted to fight to lift the yoke of oppression.
Now, as
a couple on the bottom of society.
And a couple of things I wanted to ask also. We mentioned all male figures here, but the RCP is not an all-male organization.
No, definitely
or
not.
Male, cool, macho, revolutionary type of group. It's more than that, right?
No, definitely. My comrade Sansara Taylor was just
She was a guest on the show.
through Texas a couple months ago. Actually, while I was in Ferguson, being arrested by the police there, she was going through Texas on what we called the Abortion Rights Freedom Ride, sounding the alarm around the emergency of the attack on the rights of women to have an abortion. And she got arrested, I think, a couple times down there.
And women have always been invited into the leadership and played leading roles in the Revolutionary Communist Party, which is, I think, excellent, a positive thing. It really is. The other thing I wanted to ask is, there are some issues in the past about homosexuality in the position of the Revolutionary Communist Party. That's changed over time, hasn't it?
Yes. I mean, coming out of the 1960s, but also coming out of the legacy of the international communist movement, one of the things, we took a position that homosexuality was not compatible with revolution and communism and the emancipation of humanity, and we were just wrong, and we were struggled with by a lot of people. Some gay people were struggling with this. Some straight people were struggling with this.
Sure.
We resisted it for a while, but we actually come to say, well, these people are correct. And in fact, we had to look at the roots of our wrong position in the international communist movement and to break with that. And that was part of the process of Avakian getting at what had gone wrong, where things had fallen short, and leading the party and breaking with that, but not just saying, okay, we've changed our position, let's go forward, but actually speaking in depth to here's where we went wrong, here's what we were not seeing about reality, and here is how we need to correct that. And we developed a pretty in-depth position on that, which is available on the website, revcom.us.
And to read more about that.
People want to get
let me
more
be a little
deeply
bit
into
more
that.
of a pain. Have any members or leaders of the Revolutionary Communist Party come out of the closet or come out as gay, publicly as gay, at this time?
I actually don't know, because this is a thing that I get criticized on by my wife a lot. She says, you never find these things out.
Well, that's cool. I'm going to leave that question up, and maybe in a further show we can address that, because I know people have that question. They ask me about it, so I'm asking you. All right, great.
So that, but I more look at, like, we've got revolutionary struggle to take up, we've got fun to have, and let's go do that.
All right, cool.
And my wife is always, well, what are they? Who's with who? How's this going? I said, hey, I didn't ask.
Very good. Okay, so we're talking about this event. I'm going to put up the poster again, Revolution and Religion, with Cornel West and Bob Avakian, which is coming up. It's going to be November 15th, this coming Saturday at the Riverside Church, 490 Riverside Drive. Everybody knows what it is. At 3 to 7 p.m. Doors open at 1:30. I see that. And tickets are at revcom.us. You can learn about
Revcom.us. You can go to Revolution Books.
Us, not US, right? Us.
Well, I always do us.
All right. No, it's good. I'm glad you do, too. Very good. And so we're talking about this debate and between Cornel West and Bob Avakian. We talked a little bit about Bob Avakian, his history, the Revolutionary Communist Party, our guest, Carl Dix, and getting back into the whole idea of religion, because it's fascinating to me, because when my students, many of them are from outside the United States, they ask me about American history, Civil War, different, and I always talk about the abolitionists and the role they played, and they were extremely religious. And if you look at John Brown and most of the leading abolitionists, and many of the progressive things that happened in American history happened from people who took maybe religion almost to the extreme in their point of view, and that religion justified that all men must be free, that you must make sacrifices, it's worth the fighting for, and yet now we have the religious right. Right? Is this because it's the people, or is it something about religion? I mean, there's this dichotomy.
Well, first let me correct one thing you said.
Okay,
this
please.
is not a debate. This is a dialogue.
Right.
And that really captures what's going to go on, because there's going to be a conversation between two people who come from very different perspectives, but who overlap quite a bit, to take a Cornelian term.
Sure.
That's going to be quite a bit of overlap, and it's going to surprise people how much overlap these
What's
two.
the difference then? What is the difference between religion? I mean, communists are believe in a scientific analysis that embraces...
You're actually getting to the difference.
Yeah, good.
Because look, as revolutionary communists, we base ourselves on reality, understanding why it is what it is, but also how it could be transformed, and we take a scientific approach to that. Cornel, he calls himself a revolutionary Christian, a free Jesus-loving black man. There's a great element of faith and, frankly, belief in things that aren't seen. But that's his motivation, and his motivation leads to a lot of overlap because, I mean, he and I initiated a campaign to Stop and Frisk, a campaign of civil disobedience 3 years ago. We co-founded the Stop Mass Incarceration Network, and actually we've been working together around police brutality and other issues back from 1996. You know, so even with those different perspectives, there is an overlap, and where the overlap really is founded is there's going to be a shared passion for lifting the yoke of oppression from those on the bottom of society as part of emancipating all of humanity. But then there are different approaches to what that's going to require, and even is that possible. And all of that's going to be engaged in this. Where religion fits in, look, religion can be a motivation for people to see things that are wrong and to stand up and take this on. You know, I'm reading Cornel's his latest book, Prophetic Fire, and no, actually that's not where this came from. This was Harriet Tubman. I was reading a review of a book about Harriet Tubman, and she had been hit over the head by a slave owner when she was young and developed epilepsy. But she interpreted that as messages from God. God was telling her that she had to free enslaved people. So that religious impulse in her became the basis for her to be the freedom fighter that she was. You already talked about John Brown, who based his war on slavery in a religious approach. But there were also people who took it on a secular tip. Like Cornel speculates that Frederick Douglass was essentially agnostic, that Du Bois moved from agnosticism into no longer being a believer, W.E.B. Du Bois. So people can come at that in different ways.
Someone said that Abraham Lincoln was an atheist secretly, but he just couldn't say it, you know.
Yeah, that we don't know.
I've heard it said we don't know, but
I've heard that,
said,
but we don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is, and look, where people can find in religion the motivation to act, to do something good, we as revolutionary communists will work with them to try to accomplish that something good. At the same time, we're going to debate, discuss, dialogue with them over where is this really coming from and what's it going to take to end it once and for all.
If you know, hypothetically, the Revolutionary Communist Party, the revolution comes, somehow we survive it, somehow the revolutionaries and communists are in control of parts of the United States, if not the entire United States, we're not going to close down churches,
no,
we're not going to arrest
in fact,
religious people, all the things they say, you know.
That's one of the areas where there were errors and shortcomings in terms of taking ideological differences, but then saying that people could not be worked with because of that. And even on the thing of saying that there was a state ideology in a communist society, well, that's actually not true. There is the ideology of communism will still exist, and we will work to spread that and get people to take it up. But that will exist in dialogue and debate with other outlooks, and there's not going to be one outlook for the revolutionary state because there are going to be different people in it coming from different places, all of whom need to be unleashed as part of coming to understand the reality that we're working on as deeply as possible in order to be able to transform it. And if you only base yourselves on those who agree with you, even if there are a lot of people who agree, you know, like right now, not that many people agree with revolution and communism, but even after a seizure of power, when a lot of people agree with you, you can't cut yourself off from those who don't, because they will find out things, they will discover things, they will know things that are part of reality. And you have to know that too if you're going to transform that reality, including where the revolution is going wrong and messing up. So you have to listen to the people who want to criticize you. That's something that Avakian's brought forward, and he's both going to be speaking on that in terms of the framework that he's brought forward, but people will also see it on display in the way in which he engages in dialogue with Cornel, the way that they go into differences, because like I said, I think people will find it refreshing that people with different perspectives can both overlap as much as they do, but even when they get to areas of disagreement and difference, there's going to be a mutual respect and an intellectual integrity that I think people will find both refreshing, but also something that people can learn from.
So in a future revolutionary government, there might be a cabinet position on religion with religious people that are participating or supportive of the revolution.
Well, you have to differentiate between the party and the state structure. And in the state structure, there's going to be different forces who are a part of working to transform the society who are going to actually be disagreeing. There's going to be disagreements and struggle within it.
Of course, it's a 350 million person country, right? It's hard to get everybody to agree on anything in any group of people. Wonderful.
But all of that's going to be part of the process of coming to understand the reality in order to transform it in the direction of the emancipation of humanity.
We only got a couple of minutes, minute and a half left, so we're going to reintroduce the event. But just in a short period of time, what are some of the main changes that would happen in a revolutionary state?
Well,
in 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
I know, put you on the spot.
First thing is private ownership of all of the means to create wealth. That's going to be done away with. The economy is going to be unleashed to meet the needs of people, not to line the pockets of a handful of rich people. To go back to our original discussion, those who are responsible for public safety would be oriented, recruited, and trained so that they would sooner lose their own lives than kill or injure an innocent person. That's like just a couple of things. That's
a good way to start. 3 points. All right, we have half a minute. Here's the event, Revolution and Religion. Tell us, Carl Dix, our guest, what to expect and where we should go.
This is going to be a hell of an event. You don't want to miss it. Saturday, November 15th at 3 o'clock at Riverside Church. Revolution and Religion, the fight for emancipation and the role of religion. Cornel West, Bob Avakian. Go to revcom.us for information, get tickets, to donate, to get hooked in with transportation, to come to New York for it. Be there.
Thank you very much, Carl Dix, for joining us on
Thank
Let's Talk. Appreciate that. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.